So we're going to put this lovely hot pink rickrack around the bottom of our skirt. So you've got the hole for the waist, and then if you come down to the edge, what I've actually done is I've folded my seersucker over just a little bit and popped the lace on and just pinned it so that I've got a more accurate spacing of where to put my rickrack. So what we're going to do is I've loaded the machine up with the hot pink because it's beautiful. Now here's my broderie anglaise. Underneath there is my seam allowance, and I just want to take another centimetre up. So all I'm going to do is using this edge here, see if I can get the focus on there, there we go. All I'm going to do using this edge here is try and get that somewhere between the 15 and the 20. So that way I won't be putting my rickrack and catching in that seam underneath. It's just for spacing. So where I've joined the broderie anglaise here, I've overlapped it, we'll make that the centre back, and we'll start the rickrack in more or less the same place, because actually that keeps all of the seams in one area. So this is a circle. Don't try and sew it straight, you'll come into trouble. You have to remember that you are going to sew off on a tangent into that arc there. Now with this rickrack, it's got this wavy design, it's gorgeous. What I am actually going to do is, you can sew straight down the middle if you want. That would be the cheapest way to do it. I'm actually going to take time to actually sew the wave down the centre, and that's basically, I would recommend you do that so that you're practicing the skills, machine skills. So I'm just going to pop that under there. Now what I suggest is leave the first couple of waves, because when the pattern of the waves come around again, you might find that you can trim it and carry on and make it look like one. So we're just going to do the rickrack. So just taking it slowly and turning the foot just through those waves. Incidentally, you can put this on by hand, that would be beautiful too. And you see, now we're going to go off around the circle, so I have to ensure that my rickrack is actually bending round the circle too. Slowly round the bend, up the straight. And all the time, if I just need to make a readjustment, I'm just lifting the foot and pivoting. So we go all the way around. Could take a while. Therapeutic. So let's say you want to do the straight rickrack version. Just bend that around the curve. We're just literally going to find the middle, sew it like that. I'm going to put a bet on that I reckon 80% of you will do that method. The wavy one looks much better, by the way. So I'm going to finish all the way round, and I'll come back and show you how to finish it. Right, now we're coming to the end where the rickrack's going to overlap. So I've actually given it a bit of a tug so that that line's straight up, and that's a bit of a plus. So I'm just going to snip a straight line across the crest of the wave and just line up the bottom, sewing it as though it's one. When you get to the end, mine is, just focus on it, this has just gone a little bit out, so what I tend to do is just pop something in there, a bradawl, an awl, a pin. I'm using my little scissors, and just take the work out. How's that? Pretty damn good. So the next thing I'm going to do, let's zoom out, next thing I'm going to do is I've got my circle there. I've got our rickrack on all the way around. I'm going to take out these pins. It will take me a little while because I put in hundreds of things. But what we're going to do is if I just remove that bit there, open the circle out again, trim these off, give it a press, and then what we're going to do is we're going to find our join and we're going to set our broderie like this with the bottom of this curve on the edge of the circle. We're going to go all the way around just with a holding stitch on the edge, and then once we've done that we're going to layer the skirt lining, rustling in my bag. Oh yay, it was the first thing I pulled out. Amazing. What we're going to do then is we're going to, just for purposes of demonstration, what we're going to do then is we're going to layer that together. You'll be able to see through the poly cotton, the lining. There we go, you can just see the broderie anglaise through. We're going to stitch that seam there, and when we open it out we'll have a lined skirt. Before we open it out we're going to have to do our trimming of our seams, possibly well, the best way I think to do it is with pinking shears because it's a curve, and then we will iron it flat. And then what we'll do is we'll baste when we've turned it all the way around, we will put some basting stitches into the waistline so that it doesn't stretch. Here we are, we're going to add the broderie to the skirt trim. So there's our join. We're going to pop our broderie with the right side to right side, like that. Okay, and we're going to grab our lining. I'm just going to prop it on. So the idea is we are going to make a sandwich with the broderie anglaise in the middle. And we're going to sew all the way around the outside. We're going to start by folding over 1 centimetre of the broderie, because that will give it a nice finish. I'm using pink thread so I can show you what's happening. You'd be inclined to use white, I would think, for this. Now again, you're sewing a curve. Don't try and pull it straight. You'll get into all sorts of trouble. And all we're going to do really is just take it a bit at a time. Now I don't know if you can just see faintly the difference between the patterned edge of the broderie, which you want facing into the centre of your skirt, and the scalloped edge which has no embroidery on it. This is the raw edge, as it were. So we're just going to go and do that, roughly following the line between where the embroidery part and the flat part meet. The very eagle-eyed amongst you will notice actually that the broderie almost touches the pink. That's because we are all awesome. And you can see I'm gently making a curve as I go around. So we're going to go all the way around, and then when we get back to the finishing stage where we meet ourselves at the beginning, coming back on ourselves, I'll show you how to finish it off. So eventually we're going to meet up with our little friend where we started our broderie. So we're just going to do the final bits. And then when you get to the end, you want to tuck that in on itself. In fact, mine is a little bit long. Just going to take a bit off, not too much. And then I'm just going to fold it over, pop it in the sandwich, and close the rest of that up. In fact, I'm going to push this one in a little bit more. There we go. And we're done. So taking your work out of the machine, and what we're going to do now is we need this out we come. We need this curve to lie flat, so we're going to take some bulk out of the seam, because obviously we've got the broderie in there as well now, and just trim away with your pinking scissors, pinking shears, quite close to the stitching. You want to do that all the way around. Oh, I bet it's thrilling, isn't it, watching me do this? It's worth taking the time over because it will give a much better finish. If we don't take this out, then your skirt will be very full at the bottom and won't sit nicely, won't sit flat. And also you will have all of this extra when we try and bend it back on itself to turn it inside out. You'll have all of the extra fabric in there, which means you won't get a smooth curve. So by putting these little chevrons in, clipping the seams, by putting these little chevrons in, what we're doing is we're giving the fabric enough room to expand and contract when it's folded in on itself, and these little mountains, they will then overlap and become pivot points. So the trough becomes a pivot point, and the top of the mountain, basically they scissor over each other so that you can get the curve nice and flat. Otherwise you'd have lots of excess fabric where it tried to go around that curve in your seam, and you don't want that. Right, so let's put that in the bin. Another bit of rubbish. Right, okay, so now we're going to turn ours inside out through the waist hole. Oh, I love these bits. Right, do not stretch. Don't be in a rush. Just foster it through really gently, because this fabric is quite liable to moving and stretching, which is what we're going to talk about next, because we're actually going to baste the waist, and make sure that, you know, it doesn't overstretch when we're pulling it around and trying to add it onto the bodice later. So there we can see we've got a lining, you've got your broderie anglaise trim in the middle, and you've got your rickrack. And if we all put that together, now this needs a press, so you're going to press all this nice and flat, pull it all out, tease it all out with your fingers just to pull all the curves out. Right, so I would now iron this, give it a press it from the lining side so that you don't lose this wonderful texture of the seersucker. Very countrified, this texture, I love it. And then what we're going to do is we are going to stitch around this hole within the seam allowance here. So just very gently take a long stitch, let's go to a 4, and just on the edge, just to join them together, no stretching please. We are literally doing a temporary stitch to hold the waistlines together of both fabrics. Much easier once you've pressed it. I'm sort of winging it here to show you, but what this will do is it will stop the fabric walking away from each other when we add the skirt to the bodice. You often find this around necklines and waistlines, and also armholes on commercial patterns. Basically anything that could be a stress point when joining one piece of fabric to another piece in a circular way. It just helps to stabilize everything. So we're going to pop our skirt aside for 1 minute, but now we're all trimmed and ready to go.